I don't remember the first time I unmasked, but I remember telling my boss about my diagnosis not long after I got it. I wasn't exactly nervous. I was very good at my job, and I knew she liked me. But there was still this feeling that I was revealing more about myself than most people knew. All she said was, "That doesn't make you any less brilliant." Hey, I'm Dr. Regina, PhD, and this is Divergent Paths, the podcast where we talk about all the things us late-diagnosed neurodivergent folks haven't talked about before. I also write a weekly newsletter called Nerd Notes, where I share more in-depth insights. The link to sign up is in the show description. For this episode, I'm going to talk about a question a client recently asked me. Since masking made you feel safe, how do you feel safe while you're unmasking? Brilliant, right? So I asked their permission to use this question to inspire this episode. Let's get into it. Why feeling unsafe is valid and normal and totally expected as you unmask. Masking is a safety strategy, right? It is a way for you to make yourself feel safe, to belong, to feel connected to people, which you developed out of a need for survival and security, completely unbeknownst to you. Means decommissioning a defense system you've used most of your life while your nervous system still needs protection from the world. On top of that, the mask was working, right? The mask was effective. As I said, as I have said in other episodes, I liked who I was when I was masked. I liked that person. And the mask got me through grad school. It got me through many jobs. It got me into relationships that were as fulfilling as they could be while I was masked for a long time. And it reduced the risk of rejection. It reduced the amount of rejection I might have faced in some of the relationships I had been in, some friendships, some romantic relationships, because it was protecting me. So removing it ends up not being full liberation at the very beginning, because it feels like you're taking your armor off while you're still on the battlefield. It takes a while for your nervous system to catch up. So like everything else, unmasking ends up being a skill that you need to build capacity for. Like leveling up in a game. The more you play a game, the better you get at playing that game. The better you get at the strategies, the different strategies. Unmasking becomes something that is a long process of building up that skill. When we're talking about safety, I want to very clearly acknowledge that some spaces are genuinely unsafe to unmask in. There will be some places in your life that you will always mask, and it will be necessary for your safety in order to do that. That's not a personal growth problem. That's not you not being able to unmask in that situation. That's systemic. That's in the system, whatever system it is that you're in, that you can't gain the safety in order to unmask in. That's the system's problem, not yours. You can't self-regulate your way out of an unsafe workplace or family system. I'm going to say that again. You can't self-regulate your way out of an unsafe workplace or family system. I was lucky enough, as my opening story demonstrated, to work for an unquestionably supportive boss. And I know this is exceptionally rare. And telling your workplace about your diagnosis is something that deserves careful consideration, both in how you share that information, who you share it with, on what timeline. There are so many questions to consider when you're making that decision. On top of that, safety isn't a single category. We need safety in multiple places in our life. We need to feel safe at home. We need to feel physical safety. We need social safety. We need professional and economic safety. All of those environments have different thresholds and different risks involved in them. You will have a different threshold for how safe or unsafe you can feel at work. You will have a different threshold for how safe you can feel in your relationships or how unsafe you can feel in your relationships. We can't collapse this just into feeling safe as one piece of things. There are so many different places where we have to consider our safety. But along with that, we need to start applying discernment, because discomfort is not the same thing as danger. And because when you're late diagnosed, you've been living in a state of extended trauma from being late diagnosed or unrealized or unidentified, you've been living in what your body and your nervous system has perceived as a state of threat and danger. But often, what you would probably experience if you weren't masking is more discomfort, making somebody uncomfortable because you are the way you are. And there is a big difference between something feeling uncomfortable because it's an exposure you're not used to, like my story started. I wasn't necessarily nervous. I was a little nervous to tell my boss, but it wasn't the prevailing feeling because I knew it was safe on some level. But there's a big difference between how I felt in that job and how I felt in my next job, which I ended up quitting because they couldn't accommodate my ADHD. The psychological safety difference between those two environments was vast. You have to start learning how to have discernment between what is real danger and what is discomfort in that growth, in that pushing forward, in that unmasking, and learn where your thresholds are. And your body doesn't know this yet. Your body doesn't know when you're first starting to unmask, it's going to feel very, very scary. It's going to feel threatening. Your nervous system is going to get flooded. I'm thinking about what it was like to first unmask, and I'm flushing as I'm recording this, like I'm turning red, because I'm remembering, my nervous system remembers what it was like to feel scared in those moments. Deciding to unmask is often a cognitive process that you're going through. You're thinking about it, and your nervous system will take time to catch up to feeling safe and feeling a sense of understanding in that discernment that not every discomfort means you're in danger. Giving your nervous system time to catch up is really important. When I think about what the unmasking process was like for me, one of the hardest things was realizing that one of my longest standing friendships was no longer safe for me, because I had started to unmask and I was getting some subtle and some not so subtle notifications from my friend that they were unhappy with my unmasking process. Part of that was because unmasking is learning to have boundaries in some way. Like that's a big part, at least that was a big part for me of unmasking, was learning how to have boundaries. So when you start having boundaries around someone who has benefited from you not having boundaries and has benefited from the sense of intimacy that comes from you just compromising yourself for their benefit, they can perceive that as not great. It doesn't feel good to them for all of a sudden for you to have boundaries. And as it became more and more evident to me that relationship was in need of the boundaryless Regina, it became apparent that I was just going to have to end the friendship. And I still mourn it. I still mourn it. There are times and there are days when I really miss the fact that I don't have a friendship that started when I was 15 years old. And I don't have someone to spend time with who I can tell stories of when we were teenagers and young adults and things like that, that those memory-making times are past with that friendship. And that's another form of grief. But I couldn't hold myself with where I was going in a relationship that felt unsafe like that, because that wasn't discomfort, that was danger. And yeah, I'm still sad about it. As you go along, you start to build up tolerance for being unmasked. As I've said before, although a lot of people talk about unmasking as like the shattering and this like breaking like suddenly away from your performed identity, for a lot of people, it is a much more subtle process, and building a tolerance for unmasking is really important. So remember that masking doesn't have to be all or nothing. It's not like you're always masked or you're always not. We talk about intentional masking being the goal. Pick your difficulty setting. When you're starting out, low stakes contexts for unmasking, a trusted friend, or in a space you feel comfortable in some way, sharing something that you might not have before. Those are really good ways to get started and to build your tolerance, because the more of those sort of low stakes unmasking that you do, the easier it gets to do some of the high stakes, like unmasking at work and in some of your relationships. Something you have to do that's a little harder than that is to audit and figure out who your actual safe people are and who your assumed safe people are. So safety is demonstrated by actions, validation, support. It's not implied by proximity or history. It is based on people's actions. So figuring out who is safe in your life to be unmasked around is a key component to being able to further feel that safety and be able to reveal more and more of your genuine self. Another thing to do is to build a retreat plan. Being able to mask in a specific situation isn't backsliding. It's not you doing something bad. It's not a betrayal of how far down the path you are. It can be a tactical choice. And safety often includes knowing that there are exits, knowing that you can put the mask back on to make yourself safe again. That's a very important tool to carry with you. Lastly, counter your threat scanning. You feeling like you're in danger because you're unmasking. Counter that with evidence. If you are in the early stages of unmasking, start writing it down. Start noticing and remembering and jotting down a few notes saying, hey, I unmasked and the world didn't end, and I unmasked with this person and nothing bad happened. Your brain is wired to remember the danger because that's how we survive. We need to know where the danger is. So you're so much more likely to remember the negative experiences than you are to remember the positive ones. So writing down the reactions that are good so you can keep track of how often it is better than you thought it was going to be. And that evidence will help you rewire your brain to accept that showing that sort of soft, genuine self that has been protected for so long is something that can provide you safety. That unmasking and feeling safe while you unmask isn't going to be like just flipping a switch where all of a sudden you feel the light has come on and all brightness and good things have happened for you. I've talked before about how hard it is to be really truly seen, and it can be off-putting. It can feel scary. Learning to discern between the discomfort and danger, allowing space for your nervous system to catch up with your brilliant brain, are great steps toward learning how to feel safe in this process. Have you struggled with feeling safe while you've been unmasking? Catch me on Instagram and let me know your story. I'd love to hear. I'd love to hear if this is something that you've come up against, because it really wasn't something that I had thought about until my client had brought it to my attention. If you are looking for support while you're unmasking, book a Make It Make Sense call with me, and let's see if working together makes sense. Until next time, know that the fear is real, and so are you.